Occasionally, we run into issues when we play too quickly in the opening. This game is a good example as I deviate quickly from my recommendation in my Benoni course on Chessable. So against knight c3, in the past, I've enjoyed playing both d6 and d5 here. d5 is what I recommend in the Benoni Simplified. If you play different systems with d6, like the Philidor, or the Czech system, or the Perk, this is definitely the way to go. But for King's Indian players, this is a chronic problem. I think the easiest of the lines is d5, but I play g6. Often, this is the only thing a knight c3 player plays for, is the hopes that they can move order you into a perk. So when you end up in a line, you have no idea how to play, which I have some semblance of an idea. As soon as I see f3, from teaching my students to play this with white, I'm expecting white to go bishop e3, queen d2, castle queenside, and then throw the pawns at me to attack. So if you've never seen this position before, go ahead, take your time a little bit, and say, all right, we know what white's plan is. Opposite side castling situation, what should you do? If you have experience in Sicilians, this should come natural to you. But if you've only ever played classical positions without these major imbalances, this could be difficult. So we see white's plan. Should we just castle into it and let him do whatever he wants? No. The only way to defend yourself in an opposite side castling position, well, we have a couple ways. In fact, if you take the fire out of the attack and make it to an endgame, you're okay. Or you have to hit your opponent harder than they're hitting you to defend yourself. So in this case, when f3 is played, it is already signaling that it's going to be a lever for an attack later. I do the same thing on the other side. This will be a lever for my attack later. So bishop e3, I go ahead and say, all right, if you're going to castle queenside, I'm going to get some attack over here. Queen d2, let's go ahead and press. This will at least make the development for white awkward and slow him down a bit. Need to defend the pawn, so a5, castle queenside. So without too much thought here, I play bishop a6, because this bishop really doesn't have a good square in the future otherwise, and if white's able to get their bishop to c4, it's very often quite useful in the attack. White goes king b1. So the attack for white hasn't started yet. And from experience, I know this queen and bishop battery is going to be able to take out my bishop, the main defender, and then they're looking for that h-pawn push. So in an ideal world, if I could trade a knight for that bishop, I've killed the attack. So again, that's the kind of 2 points of defending yourself in an opposite side castling position. Take away the attack, or attack them harder than they're attacking you. That's it. If you sit around and wait, you get squashed in these positions. So my plan was, all right, my bishop is doing a great job controlling some light squares. If I can get rid of the bishop, I'm good. So, knight d7, knight b6, knight c4. It's something to work with, and I'm getting development in. So knight bd7. This also has the added benefit of keeping watch over key squares in the center. g4. So I could immediately go with knight b6 here, but I felt that after g4, white is likely going to reply with knight g3. So I have not castled on the king side yet, which gives me some flexibility for ideas. If you don't rush castling, you stay in the center. This can sometimes be beneficial, I should say. So in this case, I abandoned my immediate plan of knight b6 and went for h5. So white, if they play g5, it's going to lock it down a bit, and they're eventually going to have to play for f4, f5, which will blow up the position tremendously. But my opponent, I feel, makes a mistake here with g takes h5, and after knight takes, the attack has been stunted. So let's turn our attention to attacking our opponent's king. So let's see what we can put together. Well, they go b3. So if you're a pause your video type of person, from here on, I'd recommend pausing it and practice this thinking process that I keep saying in a lot of my videos. Look for the most forcing, aggressive moves. Start with it every move here and consider it. Because we have a free attack in this position. Make the most out of it. Well, here I was thinking in terms of Binko Gambit ideas and immediately went a4. Say, well, aren't you losing the b-pawn? I'm happy to lose the b-pawn in order to open up files for attack. It's very likely I'll be able to play bishop g7, castle, and get that other rook to b8. And I've lined up everything. White goes bishop g2. Now this bishop isn't doing much more than it was doing on f1. I'll take. And now we've opened up an avenue for an attack. What's the best way to continue? Well, considering forcing moves, c5 comes to mind, bishop takes e2 comes to mind, but neither one of those quite do it. c5 could in fact give white more options in the position, which I don't want him to have. I want him, especially after seeing a move like bishop f1 to g2, this doesn't do much. So I feel like my opponent's running out of ideas. If your opponent is showing that they're having trouble making good natural moves, you want to keep tension in the position because they have a very high chance of continuing to make mediocre moves like bishop g2. So I find a way to improve without changing too much. Queen a5. This is lining up that queen-rook battery and getting ready to move the bishop out of the way. But at the same time, it passes the ball to say, okay, you got to figure this out. Knight g3. Do I want to take? No. That would develop white's rook on h1. When playing aggressively, you want to keep the tension. And what's the worst case scenario here? He plays knight takes h5 and I take back with the rook, activating another piece. Keep the tension. So, in terms of keeping the tension, what's my worst piece? A question we can often ask when trying to figure out, in conjunction with what's most forcing, what's most aggressive, what's my worst piece, how can I improve it? What's my opponent's best piece, how can I make it worse? These are the questions that go together for the overall thinking process. Well, here, bishop g7. Lining up for the attack. Hard for white to touch any pawns in the center. Hard for them to do anything on the queen side. And the king side, since the pawn structure was broken earlier with h5, we're just kind of beating white on all three zones of play. Knight takes. Thank you for the development with the rook. King's completely safe on e8. No worries. Knight e2. So here is where we should really be looking for tactical knockout punches. Because you've got everything working together for you. Black to play and devastate. We've got a deflection tactic here. Check. Well, if he doesn't grab the bishop, you end up losing a knight, probably best case scenario. Let's say I go queen a3 check, and after blocks, I can very much just do this, simplify the win, probably bringing this rook over next. Easy. My opponent grabs. So now try to see the rest of the combination. First move's easy. Grab the pawn. And it's always lovely when you have peace, harmony, and everything comes together. Would you like a rook? as taking, of course, leads to mate. So there's not much that can be done here. you can't take it, otherwise you get mated, and if you block, it's just utter devastation. So rook c5, that's that. So overall, this game is a good example. When you get move ordered, take your time and figure out what's the overall plan in the position, what should I be playing for. And time and again, I've seen, as I'm working to help my students improve, that this forcing move concept, too many people when playing chess are just kind of like dartboarding it. This move, this move, but not going deeper than, say, level 1 thinking to ask, what should I be doing in the position? What's the most forcing move? Break it down. Opposite side castling positions are easy if you're playing aggressively. If you sit passively, you get squashed. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you did. I'd appreciate it. Helps with the algorithm.